This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
I know, it's difficult to accept. The season is already a quarter over. It always goes by so fast. But we have some good news to talk about, at least good things to talk about, to ponder if you're a Michigan fan. Is Michigan a contender through a quarter of the season? We'll talk about that and more next on this week's Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Clark. Waits for it. Hit. Caught.
Hey, they said you can't be Ohio State. Now what?
Brady gets terrific. Turns it and in. Touchdown, Knight again. Schultz just before Brazil got him. And a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle. Caught by Collier at the 5 on his feet. Touchdown, Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris packs a wallop, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Sacked. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number, and he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
Win it. We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
Well, greetings. I'm not going to say go Iowa, I'm not going to say go Hawks, but I'm also not going to say go blue. I'm Aaron McIntire. Steve is out again this week on the road. I'm joined, though, by his son, the very capable Noah Deace, for another edition of Michigan Podcast. And Noah, we say this every single year, and if your dad was here, we'd be saying the exact same thing. We'd be lamenting the exact same thing. This offseason goes by so slowly, even though this season I thought it went by quick, but still it goes by in the grand scheme of things. Seems like it goes by so slow. We anticipate football season so much, and then you blink your eyes and it's a quarter of the way over. But here we are nonetheless. Now, you lucky sons of guns over in Wolverine land, you got to just kick it this weekend. Didn't have any game to worry about. You just got to sit back and relax and watch what was a really fun slate of Big Ten football over the weekend. Of course, the double overtime game over in Happy Valley. It's the same game again. It's the same game again. It's the same game again for James Franklin. We'll talk about that more tomorrow on Bigger 10. The Iowa-Indiana game, Iowa just completely pooping the bed at the end. The Washington-Ohio State game, Ohio State was in control of that game all way through. But you guys got to just sit back and ponder things, and that's kind of what we're going to do this week on Michigan Podcast. We're going to play a series of buy, sell, or hold. You know how this game works. A proposition, and by the way, thanks to Steve for putting together the rundown today. Steve actually did that this time, and appreciate that. He's put together a list of propositions. Most of them we'll talk about with Mark Rogers, the voice of college football, when he comes on a little bit later. But first, Noah, let's begin with this proposition. Through a quarter of the season, Michigan football, college football playoff contender, buy, sell, or hold?
Going with buy. I think as a contender, it's way more likely than not that they make it as one of the top 12 teams in the country by the end of the season. I would say as a lock, I would probably hold, but as a contender, I'm 100% going to buy. I think if you look at the schedule from now on, it's a lot more favorable. I think the only really games other than that Ohio State game, which is always a concern every single year, no matter what the winning streak is, think the only other games I'm worried about even a little bit are maybe the Washington game, and I think they're one of the most underrated teams in college football.
Yep.
And definitely the USC game, now a night game.
At night, yeah.
At the Coliseum. Worried about that a little bit. And Maryland, which I wasn't really thinking about at the beginning of the season, but I mean, they've given us some tough games in the past, even back in 2023 when we won the national championship, as you can see here. I mean, that was a pretty tough game. I think they have a pretty good quarterback. I mean, I would say those are the only games I'm really concerned about. I think it's more likely than not you win at least 2 of them. I think they should win 3 of them. I think you would at least win 2 of them. And then if you go into the Ohio State game undefeated in the Big Ten, even if you lose that game, you're still a pretty serious contender to make the Big Ten championship. And I think even as the loser of the Big Ten championship, if that were to happen, then I think you make the playoffs. I think even if they don't make the Big Ten championship with the schedule, I think it's more likely than not they're one of the top 12 teams in the country. So I'm going to go with bye.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the schedule, and that's exactly where I was going to go for this. So are they a college football playoff contender? We're not talking about automatic bye. We're not talking about conference yet. Are they a contender? And I mean, I guess if you lost to like a Northwestern, maybe this would be a consideration. But even if you went 7-1 the rest of the way, there's no way a 10-2 Michigan team is not making the college football playoff. Is there? I can't envision a world where they don't make the college football playoff. Even if they maybe don't deserve because they lost to a Northwestern, a 10-2 Michigan team is just not missing the college football playoff, I don't think.
I think 9-3 would be a lot more like, depending on who those other 2 losses are. I don't want to say any loss looks good, and I'm not saying that by any stretch of the imagination, but I mean, a non-conference loss at Oklahoma at night with a true freshman quarterback week 2. If I had to pick any game to possibly lose on that schedule that we have this year, I would have picked that one. I mean, that's not a Big Ten game. It doesn't really affect your chances of making the Big Ten championship. Definitely affects making the playoff percentage there, but I don't think it affects anything Big Ten related because it's not a Big Ten game. So, I mean, other than that game, I don't really think we lose 2 or more other games, if possible at all. I really don't see it. I don't see 9-3, to be honest. I really see 10-2, but even 9-3, it might be a bit, maybe, depending on who those losses are. But
yeah, I mean, it's Wisconsin this week at home. That's not an automatic loss. USC, you mentioned that's at night, going across the country, so that is something. And they do have a decent offense at times, but as Mark Rogers pointed out a few weeks ago, and multiple people have pointed out, they're kind of, you don't know what USC you're going to get in any given game. So that could be very good. That could be very challenging for Michigan. Washington, I agree with you. They're underrated, but they also have to go to your house. So I'm not, from a Michigan perspective, not super worried about that. At Michigan State, I don't know. Maybe it's the rivalry thing, but it seems like that's a bigger deal in East Lansing than it is for you all. Purdue, that's a win. Northwestern, that's a win. Maryland, you make a good point. Depending on where they are as a season, how dangerous they actually are versus what their record is, that could be an easy trap game because the next week is Ohio State, and that's always going to be a coin flip. All right, so buy, sell, or hold. You're a buy that they're a contender. I'm a buy that they're a contender as well for the college football playoff. Now for the Big Ten race. Buy, sell, or hold, Michigan football is a contender for the Big Ten title.
I mean, contender, I would say buy again. I would say, like the same thing as before, lock, I would say probably hold or sell. As a contender, I'm going to say buy. I mean, if they go 7-1 the rest of the way through, that loss more likely than not is against a USC or an Ohio State. And I think either of those being your own Big Ten loss is forgivable enough to be able to make the Big Ten championship. My belief is that the Big Ten championship is going to be Oregon and then Michigan or Ohio State. That's my view. I'm not confidently saying that Michigan is better than an Indiana or a Penn State, or that they're one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the conference even. But I think given the rest of our schedule in the Big Ten, it's more likely than not, I think, that we could probably go 7-1 the rest of the way, if not even better. I don't think that's super likely, but I think 7-1 the rest of the way is pretty reasonable. So as a contender, I'm going to go with bye.
Yeah, I'm looking at Ohio State's schedule as well. And, before the season, they would have, even their home game against Penn State, I would have been like, oh, that's a little bit of, that doesn't look scary to me if I'm an Ohio State fan now. So taking out that game, they have kind of a similar schedule to y'all. So as a contender, yeah, I think that's an easy buy. I just think, so Ohio State does not play Indiana. Michigan does not play Indiana. Oregon does play Indiana. That's coming up not this week, but next week. I think at the end of the season, more likely than any other year, even when we had divisions, we could be looking at a series of tiebreakers at the end of this thing. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. Maybe 3-4 deep. So that could be interesting. Now, when we come back, we'll play an extended round of buy, sell, or hold with some Michigan player props. Let's call them that. Mark Rogers, the voice of college football, joining us next.
Folks, the best way to support us here at Michigan Podcast is to do so via our Patreon page, patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. We are posting picks there year round, whether it's Major League Baseball, whether it's college basketball, whether it's the NFL, and of course, college football. Our win total best bets, you would have gotten those, for example, before the market moved. About half the books in the last few days moved on Texas under 10.5 down to 9.5. If you were following us on Patreon when we posted that, you would have gotten that before that number moved, right? So we give you all kinds of great data and picks, PGA major picks as well. We've cashed 8 of the last 11 majors in professional golf. So if you want to support us on our Patreon page, it's just $10 a month there at patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. That's right, just $10 a month. Patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. That's patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. And thank you so very much if you're one of our supporters already.
Back once again for the 10-minute war. Noah Deace is with me, along with the voice of college football. Steve would say he's the one reasonable bucknut. I just say he's a good guy named Mark Rogers. Mark, welcome to the program once more. How are you doing this week?
It's a nice change of pace for the introduction, Aaron. Appreciate that.
Hey, I got your back.
I'm doing well.
I got your back for sure. So we've been playing a little game, a little round of buy, sell, or hold. You know how this works. You buy if you agree with this prospect. You sell if you disagree. And you hold if you're 50-50, but only pansies hold. So neither of you better hold on these things. Noah and I have been discussing whether or not Michigan is, 1, a college football playoff contender. I think that they are. 2, I'm not as sold whether they're a Big Ten playoff contender, but the more that I kind of think it through is I think they absolutely are, looking at their schedule down the stretch. But Steve has sent some more propositions for us to peruse for buy, sell, or hold. I'm sorry, fake news or not, whatever. Let's do buy, sell, or hold. That's better. I think that fits this better. So buy if you buy these prospects, sell if you disagree, and hold if you're not quite sure. The number one thing that we're getting to now, Justice Haynes is going to break the Michigan single-season rushing record of 1,818 yards held by Tim Biakapatuka in 1995. Haynes is on pace for more than 2,000 rushing yards. Buy, sell, or hold? Noah, let's start with you.
I'm going to say buy. From the second, even before he committed, I was a pretty big Justice Haynes believer. I think in terms of just all-around talent, you haven't really seen much of a running back like this since Blake Corum back in 2022. And I really like the way they're utilizing him so far. And I think he's far exceeded expectations, even for me, which was pretty high. I've always kind of been a believer, even though they always said that it's going to be 1A, 1B, that's really going to be 1 and 2. But, I mean, Justice Haynes, I think he's been absolutely insane so far. I'm really interested to see, because I think I heard Wisconsin has a pretty good run defense, so I'm interested to see how that goes this next week. But I think if he's on pace for that, I think that's a very real possibility, so I'm going to go with buy.
Well, I didn't know what a Justice Haynes was prior to this season, like at all. And, you know, I think most fans across the country, I think Steve discussed this last week, still really don't know what a Justice Haynes is. And I think he could sneak up on a lot of people. Mark, what do you think about this prospect?
Well, that was the player evaluation angle. I'm going to go with more of the math and probabilities, trying to make that work. So basically, we're looking at a player who's played against the worst teams on the schedule thus far. So now this schedule gets more difficult. Nebraska, as was alluded to, the 5th-ranked rush defense in the country. Wisconsin's number 1 right now. So, yeah, that is going to be an interesting deal to add up and watch that. And I think Wisconsin's rankings actually more valid than Nebraska's at the time, having played an Alabama football team on the road. So this is not a regular season statistic, I believe. Therefore, if we're counting maybe Michigan's ability to get into the playoffs, deep into the playoffs, then obviously that helps out the Justice Haynes cause. But 1,800 plus yardage with an injury factor, God forbid, involved as well. I got to go probabilities that sell it. He does not break the all-time Michigan rushing record.
So a disagreement right off the bat. I don't know if you're already cracking runs and you're already putting together games like you have against Nebraska. Now, those things don't always just fall into place and come through. And like Noah said, this coming weekend is going to be a big test for the Michigan rushing attack. You can't just count all those things to just play out for the rest of the season. But then again, if you're putting together multiple good rushing attacks and rushing, and it's not just like one play every single game, although he has had some big plays against big opponents on the road now, he's got a chance to at least get very close. Here's the second proposition. Bryce Underwood is currently on pace for 8 touchdown passes on the season, which is only one more than Davis Warren threw for last season. Buy, sell, or hold, he's going to substantially pick it up. Now, substantially can be anything that you want it to be. Mark, let's start with you this time.
We'll go substantially being double that at least. I predicted, I know Steve and I threw out our Bryce Underwood stat lines, and I actually was more optimistic about him throwing more touchdown passes, so I'm way behind at this point. My figure was 21. And again, Michigan's ability to possibly do a Big Ten championship game, which I do not predict, but it would not shock me. I did predict this to be a playoff team. I'm going to say that, he substantially, if we're going to say doubles that, absolutely. I'm going substantially. I'm buying that. Yes, absolutely.
Noah.
I'm going to say I'm going to buy that too. I think he's going to substantially increase that. I think it's at least going to be 15 plus touchdowns by the end of the year. That's kind of my take. I kind of would say probably between 2,200 to 2,500 passing yards, but I think he's going to far surpass what Davis Warren had last year by a lot.
Those last two have to go hand in hand, though, don't they? If Justice Haynes and the entire rushing attack continues on, even remotely close to the trajectory that they're on, that's going to open up the passing attack. I have to believe even more, especially in the Big Ten season where play action comes into play as well. So I think those last two go absolutely hand in hand. Anything else either of you want to say on this?
Well, hand in hand one way or the other. So you're looking at it from a complementary standpoint. That makes total sense. Yes. You can also look at it from a total yardage standpoint, that if you're favoring the run, you're going to de-emphasize the pass or vice versa, that there's only so many yards that an offense can accumulate in a game. So I think both of those things are worth consideration.
Yeah, one way or another, hand in hand. Let's get to the next prospect. Regardless of when Michigan gets healthier on the offensive line, there has to be a starting spot for Jake. How do you say this last name, Noah? Guanera. So there has to be a starting spot for Jake Guanera. Buy, sell, or hold, Noah?
I'm going to go with buy. I think I'm really impressed by what I've seen from him so far. I mean, even when Brady Norton comes back, which might be this next week against Wisconsin, I think that Jake Guanera has definitely earned the spot, and I think that's kind of a up in the air type of position there. He's started kind of more as a center, but I mean, the fact he's really able to get in there at the guard position and compete for that shows how good and how versatile he is, in my opinion. And I think they wouldn't really put him out there unless they really needed him out there. I mean, I think it just overall, he's a good athlete, and I think that he's eventually, if not right away, eventually by the end of the season, he's going to definitely beat out Brady Norton, in my opinion.
All right, Mark Rogers, Ohio State fan. We're now getting into the nitty-gritty of Michigan personnel. Do you have a take on this?
Well, I would say Noah's done a great job of breaking the situation down and the player down. I have been watching Michigan field the best offensive lines in the conference and arguably the country now for going on 5 seasons. So I am rooting for the exact opposite, that they somehow find their 5 worst offensive linemen to make their way to the Ohio State game at the end of the season.
Next one.
I guess in short, I'm buying, but based on Noah's evaluation, yes.
All right, next one. Rod Moore will still lead this team in interceptions when it's all said and done. Cole Sullivan is the leader currently with 2. Buy, sell, or hold. Rod Moore ends up the leader in interceptions on the season. Mark Rogers.
Well, I'm a stats geek, and this speaks more to college football accuracy in passing, that even though the proliferation of the pass game has exploded, the number of pass attempts, et cetera, because of the skill of the passers and the pass catchers, increasing decade by decade, and also just the ability to throw safer passes. They don't, throw the ball downfield as much. The number of interceptions, if you go from team to team, is drastically less than it was, let's say, 20 to 40 years ago. So this number could be 3, it could be 4. If somebody picks off 5 passes this season for Michigan, that's a pretty high number for an individual for one team. And since he's already down 2-1, I believe, is that the stat?
Yeah. Does Rod Moore already have an interception, Noah?
No, he does not.
So he's down 2-0.
So far was the Nebraska game, and that was kind of getting in there a little bit and not really fully starting the whole game.
I'm selling. I'll take the field.
So that's, you would have to outstrip, 3-2, assuming Sullivan doesn't have any more interceptions. Noah, what's your take? Rod Moore leads the team in interceptions by the end of the season.
I think because of the overall depth at all the DB spots, I mean, not so much corner, but specifically both safety spots, and how talented and deep the team is at that spot. It's a little bit immature, but I think that kind of something that just fix it itself overall. Of course, this across the season, you saw what Brandon Hillman did against Nebraska there. It's a little ridiculous, but I think overall, just because of the amount of guys there are that can really get a lot of playing time in that room, statistically speaking, it's more likely than not that he doesn't lead the team in interceptions. I think it's a very real possibility, but I think more likely than not he doesn't, so I'm going to go with Sell.
All right, one more prospect before we talk about your Buckeyes for a little bit. Mark, this last one is Jayshon Barham. Leads the team with 3 sacks, but now that he's full-time out on the edge, he'll reach double-digit sacks this season. Buy, sell, or hold, Noah?
I think I'm going to go with buy, just statistically, based off the amount he's had. And those 3 sacks aren't including just the games he's played at edge. Those are also including games where he wasn't rushing the passer as much. I think double-digit might be a little bit misleading. That could be just he barely gets 10, because that's also if you include any potential playoff or bowl games as well on top of that. I think he's just a complete and total freak athlete, and I think for offensive lines, it's really difficult who to judge. Derek Moore has had a pretty quiet season, but I think part of that is because they're really prioritizing putting more guys over on his side, juxtaposed to against guys like TJ Guy, who I think is a great player, but I mean, he's not on the same level as Derek Moore, in my opinion. So I think it's very likely, but I think it's more likely that he does that than Rod Moore leads the team in interceptions. That's just going off heavy bias there, liking the player a lot and thinking about the impact that Derek Moore in general has an offensive line. So I'm going to go with buy.
I mean, if he just averages 0.75 sacks per game for the rest of the season, I know you can't get 3/4 of a sack, but that's just what his average works out to be. He's at 9 sacks at the end of the season. Mark, what's your take?
Yeah, so Noah did a great breakdown. I haven't followed it to that degree, but I followed it pretty well in regards to, the outside linebacker transition to defensive end or edge. That is going to certainly play in his favor. You can also go with the angle that offenses and offensive coordinators are very cognizant of who he is, and they're going to try everything to stop him and let other players beat him. But I do think that Michigan has enough talent on the other side. TJ Guy was mentioned in particular to take some heat off of him. And I'm just going to make a vote for sheer player ability, evaluation, talent, freakishness. Yes, he's getting better and better and better. And I'm going to believe that he's going to hit that total of 10 sacks at least.
All right. So for the next few minutes, Mark, what did we learn about your Buckeyes this past weekend? We've had this one. We talked about this a few weeks ago. Ohio State going on the road to Seattle. Very difficult place to play. Let's make no bones about that at all. They seem to handle Washington okay. They seem to do just fine. Maybe not lighting up the scoreboard the way some people wanted them to. Damon Williams, he looked fine. But he ran into the Buckeye defense. So what did we learn about your team after this first kind of circled on the calendar, aside from Texas, of course, date on the Big Ten schedule?
It's obviously a high bar in terms of expectations out there from fans and critics as well that expect the number 1 team in the country and expect Ohio State just to bludgeon teams week after week after week. So, that is a notorious difficult stop, both in general on the West Coast and specifically in Husky Stadium for everybody in the Big Ten. That'll be a narrative that we can continue to monitor that gained a lot of steam early last Big Ten season when teams were having to travel 2 and 3 time zones to go out west, and their inability to win. It was a workmanlike effort. They slowly separated themselves. It was a slow grind. They didn't come out and fire 3 touchdown passes to go up 21-0. So I think it shows us more of Ryan Day's trust in the defense and his continued monitoring of the pass offense, and specifically Julian Sayin, that being his first road start. So he passed that test in regards to getting out with a win, not turning the ball over, doing what he was asked to do, high completion percentage, not a risk, inducing offense called by Ryan Day. So Ryan Day is showing us, even though his reputation is high-flying Dwayne Haskins type 50 touchdown passes a season, that he's adjusted that to the personnel he's got, the belief in the defense, not just that they're playing that dominant of football, because Washington did move it between the 20s, but they have somehow carried this DNA, much like Michigan has in certain ways throughout this Harbaugh, Sharon Moore, dynasty era post 2020, that they've carried this DNA over on defense, that regardless of what happens between the 20s, they're going to stop anybody at the goal line or in the red zone.
Yeah, I saw a few takes, and it was kind of hard for me to follow along because that's when Iowa was playing on Saturday. But it kind of looked to me, I was seeing takes on social media. Oh, Ryan Day is just scared bleepless to, put it in the hands of Julian Sayin. And I don't think that's necessarily a fair take. To me, this kind of looked like the Texas game where you've got a new quarterback. Let's get him settled in. Let's make sure we're not asking too much of him. This is kind of a first Big Ten road start version of what we saw against Texas. That's the way that I took it anyway from my vantage point.
Absolutely. That's what it was. And Ryan Day was very upfront about that after the Texas game. There was no reason with the way our defense is playing and the way the game was going to put ourselves in harm's way. In the Texas game in particular, was bad field position for much of the second half. That kind of leaned into it as well. But I just think he's already played his hand, Ryan Day, and he's bringing along a young quarterback. And this is just another step. It's first Big Ten game, first Big Ten road game, decent opponent, quality opponent, top 30, 35 team in the country, something in that range, but playing at their place. And check the box. He didn't turn it over. He high completion percentage, and we'll continue to give him more of the offense and more responsibility next week. And then the next week after that, as things move along.
Great stuff as always, Mark. Appreciate you. Follow him at the VOCFB on social media, and the voice of college football right here on YouTube. Have a great rest of your day. See you again tomorrow on Bigger 10, by the way.
Excellent. I appreciate the invite. We'll see you then to talk some Big Ten football.
Sounds good. We'll be back, Noah and I, with our poll results as well as feedback of the week that's coming up next. X-Poll results. Steve asked the audience at Michigan Podcast on X, Justice Haynes is currently on pace to set the Michigan single-season rushing record. Does he do it? Noah, we already know your answer. We just heard that a few minutes ago with Mark Rogers. You think he is on pace to set that record. And the majority of the audience, although not as strong of a majority as I would have expected, 56.8% say yes. No is at 43.2%. Are the results that surprising to you, Noah?
I don't think those results are surprising at all. I think if you look at the record, it might sound a little bit hard to beat, but given Justice Haynes' stats so far, and as Mark alluded to, also playoffs, if you make that, I think, that adds an extra couple games there to really break that record. And I think if Michigan makes the playoffs, not with an automatic bye as a Big Ten championship winner, I think it's might be more likely than not that they have a home game first. And I think that really has a big thing to do with it, depending on what team you're playing in that first round. I think that's probably the case that's going to end up happening. But I think if you account for playoffs, in even worst case scenario, just a bowl game, which they're going to make a bowl game. If they made a bowl game last year, they're making a bowl game this year. I don't think that's even within a question of a doubt. But I mean, if you account for even one extra game and the stats he's had so far, I really have a hard time denying that. I think he's just been absolutely elite so far. And I know a lot of people, you mentioned it, a lot of people might have said that, oh, he just had one big run each game. That's each game.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's each game.
But he's putting together good games as well.
Right, yeah.
He's putting together, that was the point that I was trying to make.
I was saying you might have been saying that other people were thinking that. Right. But I mean, that's each game. If you're able to do that for 4 games in a row, that's the norm. That's not a fluke or the exception. So I think even if he has like 56 yards and a single touchdown or no touchdowns against Wisconsin, that's the exception right there. I think it's more likely than not for the rest of the season. He has pretty similar stats to what he's had so far. If he's able to do that consistently 4 games in a row, and that's not against pretty shabby competition either. I mean, Oklahoma has a pretty great front seven, has a great defense. I think we said Nebraska has the 5th best running defense, and Wisconsin, who we're about to see here, has the number 1 rushing defense thus far. So I think you'll really see him come out in a way this next week, if how that goes. I think that really gives you a good view of the rest of the season.
Well, I think our feedback of the week actually plays into what I think you and I were starting to say there with this from Adversus Omnia, who says, with this newfound stretch run offense, he's going to be ripping off big runs all year. He's much more explosive than Penn State's backs. So this is the way it always should be, and maybe always should have been. But with old school football coaches, they've got a system. You fit into that system. No questions asked whatsoever. I think in this new world of college football, these coaches, particularly offensive coordinators, have got to be nimble, even mid-season, and saying, hey, this is what happens to be fitting in with my running back, my wide receivers, but especially running backs. What happens to be fitting in? These play calls happen to be fitting in with my running back's skill set. As an Iowa fan, I saw this last year with Caleb Johnson, outside zone, and I know Iowa gets made fun of that for a long time. He happened to be really good at that. And the toss sweeps, which, well, they were technically toss sweeps, but they were really a different form of outside zone, just helping to get to the outside faster. He was really good at that, picking apart the hole. So guess what we ran a lot of last year? A lot of those toss sweeps, but really outside zone plays. It sounds like the stretch running offense has been picking up with Michigan, and it sounds like your coaches have found kind of Justice Haynes' niche here, or maybe both of your entire running back core's niche. And I think that's just what's required now. So kind of going to your point, yeah, I mean, he's put together these big, one big run, one big flashy run every game, but it's also the not big flashy runs as well that's been impressive with me, with Michigan's running attack, is that, yeah, they're just sticking with it, and eventually you are going to be able to bust one of those. The defense, just laws of probability, they're not going to be able to just stuff you every single time, most likely, at the level Michigan plays at. So your thoughts on this feedback?
I mean, to the point they made about explosiveness, I think explosiveness is really more of an eye test thing and less of a statistical thing. We're talking stats, sure. I mean, I think he looks better than the other 2 backs at Penn State. I don't think I've seen enough of Penn State this year, just not in terms of like how they've played this season, but in terms of me personally watching them. I've not spent enough time sitting down watching them to really confidently say he's more explosive. And I think there might be, I haven't really had a close look at the stats. There might be a little bit more give and take there with them too, other than compared to how there is with Justice Haynes and Jordan Marshall, because Justice Haynes has gotten the majority of the carries. But I think in terms of an explosiveness, like I said before, we haven't seen a running back like this guy at Michigan since 2022, Blake Corum. And although Blake was great in 2023, he felt like a little bit kind of a different kind of back there. I mean, 2022, Blake Corum is my favorite Michigan football player of all time, period. And I think we really haven't seen anybody like that, like Justice Haynes since then. And I think he has the potential to maybe even be better, because his stats so far compared to how Blake Corum's was that year is even better, and he's been gone against better competition than Blake Corum did that year. So I think there's a very real possibility that he breaks that record. I think there's a very real possibility that he might be more explosive than those 2 backs at Penn State.
Well, I think we'll have a great indication as to which way that's going after this weekend when y'all welcome the Badgers into Michigan Stadium. Putting you on the spot. Score prediction for that one?
Probably go about 42-10, Michigan.
Wow. Okay. I can see that. I mean, as you can have a great run defense, but if you're not playing complementary football, but it's a cliche because there's some element of truth in it, which Wisconsin just does not right now for a number of different reasons. your defense is going to wear down. So I could see that score definitely coming to fruition. Great stuff as always, Noah. Appreciate you coming in, filling in once more. He and I will be back again, along with Mark Rogers, tomorrow for Bigger 10. Until then, I'm not saying go blue, but you can if you want, Noah.
I'll say it again, go blue.